love getting on Twitter after a Thursday night game and seeing the whole world crying about one player and their performance, and then seeing it over and over and over again into the next day. One, I think it's funny. And then two, it's an indicator that I can buy low on this player in fantasy football. I can catch that player on the cheap. Even though he busted, there's a chance I can swindle somebody in one of my leagues and get this player. And I get very excited. And Jahmyr Gibbs is that recent bust, that player that people are talking about left and right, about his usage, about his work rate, about David Montgomery, this and that, and we're going to go whether or not you should be trading for him in fantasy football. But what you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. Stop missing out on these deep dives. Stop missing out on this content that helps you set your lineup and make those trades. But let's dig in. Let's talk about Jahmyr Gibbs first here. And it hasn't been a tremendous season so far. We had 12 points in week 2 against Seattle. Everybody's scoring on Seattle, though. But we got 9 points, 8 points. We got a first-round pick with 4.3 speed who was very productive with 2 collegiate programs. Very good profile. Got drafted pretty high in the first round at a spot where you really shouldn't be drafting running backs unless they're generational talents, and then he gets casted aside. The funny thing about this, they traded away DeAndre Swift and then draft Gibbs and gives Gibbs DeAndre Swift usage when they could have had Swift for a little bit cheaper. The thing about this, though, we got a full season in front of us. We got a bunch of games to go. We're only 4 weeks down. We've seen some promise. We've seen some downside. That's just how the game's played. We know, or we have a good feeling of how these Detroit Lions like to distribute the football. Looking at his first 3 games going into the season, 8, 12, 9 fantasy points. Looking at the chart here, 9 this week, so not tremendous. We got 1 RB2 week on our season. Looking at the targets, 2, 9, 2, 5 last night, so we're getting some volume. He also ran 14 routes last night, which is about his average. His average is like 15.7 or something like that. So in the passing department, we're around his average work rate when you average the 4 games up. 9 targets a game is around his upside. 2 is his low point so far. So we're getting a mix of that, but he is being used in the passing department. Rushing attempts up and down. 17 in week 3, 8 last night, 7 and 7. So we're getting around 8 to 10 rush attempts a game, 7 to 10, whatever you want to dice it up to. About 10 a game. Call it that. 10 a game probably once all these games are played. About 10 rush attempts a game, about 5 targets a game. So you're getting about 15 opportunities a game. Give a little, take a little. So you're getting some opportunities here to do something. You're getting something, but it's not what you paid for. It's not what you paid for in the beginning of the season or what that other manager paid for in the beginning of the season. And things are starting to get frustrating because we're starting to get into the meat of the season as well. Going into week 4, we're talking about weeks 1 through 3 here. 4.3 targets per game, 13.4% target share, 15.7 routes per game, 43.9% route participation rate, 13.7 touches a game, 45% snap share, 46% opportunity share. So we are getting volume here. It's just not enough. We're sharing the workload, and we need more workload to be consistent. We are going to have upside games here because we're using the passing game. We got 4.3 speed. We can break off long runs. Just hasn't hit yet. We need the right matchups here. And then looking at the schedule going forward, we got Carolina, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Vegas, the Chargers. So we got some opportunities coming up, but not the sexiest schedule either because you see the Bears twice. You got Green Bay again. We got some slower paced matchups. Denver's down there. That could be a slower paced game or faster paced. We saw them against the Dolphins. You know what can happen there. But looking at the game last night, David Montgomery was rolling. You got to roll with the hot hand. You got to roll with the hand that's hot, and you got that lead early. You're up in that game. The game script wasn't there for Jahmyr Gibbs. You weren't playing from behind. You're not looking to use him in the passing game. You're not looking to use him on his edges. You're just playing ball the way it should be played. You're playing with your between the tackles back there who can also be using the passing and giving him some opportunity, and he's running hot, so you're going to roll with it. That's just how it is. That's just how the game is played. And there's going to be some games where David Montgomery's not as hot and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his opportunity, and that's just how it's going to be. We're only 4 games into the season. We got a lot of games to look at, but a lot of people are saying the roof is falling. A lot of people are worried. You're seeing that on social media right now. They're still talking about it. We can take advantage of this. The way that we can trade for him is to package up. So take one of your wide receivers, not your best one, somewhere in the middle of the road of your lineup, or somewhere who's barely making your lineup each week, or someone on the back end of your roster who's getting some fantasy production, kind of highlighted some names in yellow, and you want to package them up maybe with a running back who's a little bit lesser, who you're not really starting. You do not want to sell one of your top-end running backs because you don't want to give away that production. And we're not trying to be one for one here. We're trying to buy on the low. So we're trying to package up. It may take 3 players. It may take 2 wide receivers and a running back. The thing is, once you get rid of a couple players, you can now play the waiver wire a little bit more. And now we're getting rid of some of the jabronis on our team and getting a running back with immense upside, immense talent, at a very low cost, which is something you're not going to find often on the waiver wire anyway down the road. And things might click later in the season, week 8, 9, 10. Later on down the road, he might be going off, and you're shooting your bet on upside. You're not selling any stud players. We're going cheap, and we're going to make them tell us no. So we're going to package up some other players here, our lesser wide receivers, say our wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, as long as he's scoring some fantasy points, because we want to make them think that they're getting something. And then we want to package with a running back, our 3rd running back, 4th running back, some guy you think has some value, that has some upside, that has something in their portfolio that they can roll with. If you got another player you want to deal with, say you got an extra tight end, because you shouldn't be having 2 tight ends anyways, or something like that to throw in there, go ahead. Usually 2 players is the max in redraft. 3 is hard to do because now they got to drop somebody. But really, you got to be creative. And odds are you're not going to get a deal done because he's a hold. He's a huge hold right now. I'd be holding him. I wouldn't be selling him. I'm trying to catch him cheap. I'm trying to catch him on the cheap. I'm selling wide receiver 1s on bad teams or slow volume teams, or wide receivers who look good, but there's other wide receivers on that team who are taking some of the workload, who are up and down, who have some value, but I can pawn off, maybe like a Nico Collins, maybe like a Jaden Reed, maybe like a Josh Reynolds, maybe something like that, and then package that with a running back, a tight end, or something else that has some value or perceived value that I can use to package up and get Jahmyr Gibbs and have for the rest of the year. This is not a finite move. This is something you got to be creative with. This is something you got to work with. You're kicking this manager in the shins and seeing if they can pony it up. And if they don't, oh well, make them tell you no. That's a sales thing. If you worked in sales, that's one thing they're going to tell you. Make the customer tell you no. Ask them if they want it. Ask them if they want to make this deal. Ask them what they want. Ask them what they need. See if you can make it happen. Make them tell you no, though. Make them tell you no in the trade. That's what we do in Dynasty all year round. When something happens and it impacts the player's value, you go kick that manager in the shins, make them tell you no, and see if you can get the deal happen. One of those things are going to happen. No big deal if you can't walk away with a trade. The thing is, you got to remember, he's got 4.36 speed. He's elusive. He's got burst. Good in the passing game. We got upside here. Everybody wanted him during draft season. Everybody did. Now everyone's sour on him. We see this blowing up on social media. It may not be in your league. It may not be in his league. It may not be in that guy's league. But it's out there. I'm seeing it. And you need to capitalize on it and see if you can. Kick that manager in the shin. See if you can catch him on the cheap. If you have him, hold him. Don't sell him for cheap. Don't sell him for cheap. Do not do that. Do not do that. Hold him. See what happens. Running backs are hard to get. Running backs are very hard to get. You want to hold on to those guys as long as you can. You do not want to sell him while he's on the cheap right now. That's why it's called buying low, because his value right now is on the low. You want to sell it when it's on the high to get a return. So he's a hold right now, and you want to kick the manager in the shins to see if he'll fold. See if he's FOMOing right now over this performance, because we're seeing this a lot right now on social media. It's the talk of the town right now. Everyone's talking about Jahmyr Gibbs this, Jahmyr Gibbs that. They're talking about the usage, talking about the work rate, talking about the fantasy production, talking about DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. There's a lot going on with Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of people worried about him, but you need to see if the manager in your league is worried about him and see if you can catch him on the cheap. Let me know if you can in the comments below. More likely not. But you got to test those waters. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. And I want to thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.